Well, hello and welcome to episode number 432 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show it looks like the final curtain call for Doncaster Sheffield Airport. A major revision to British Airways Avios points are awarded, and some Heathrow airport workers are planning a 3-day strike. In the military news, Nigeria places an order for 55 new aircraft of varying types. And joining me this week, honestly, I missed you the last 2 weeks, Nev. I really have missed you guys. How are you, Nev?
Well, we've missed you as well, Carlos. It's been, what's the word I'm looking for? Emotional without you. But no, here we are again. How's your week been then? Has it been a good one?
Yeah, it's not been too bad, to be fair. I've had quite a busy week. I've had another one of my weeks where I've done about 6 million miles, driven halfway across the UK, delivering, dog food and this, that and the other and everything else that goes with it. Been to Yorkshire today. Yeah. Actually, to be fair, Nev, the weather has been quite nice today. A bit different to this morning when I was on the way to work when it was 4 degrees Celsius.
Oh, chilly. Yes, well, I've had a very satisfactory week, I have to say. It was my birthday week, and although this wasn't my birthday present because I bought it for Mrs. Nev, we went to Stockholm to see The Script, that rather good Irish band. And it was one of those venues which was quite small. It was a hotel in the middle of Stockholm called Burns Hotel, and it was about a 1,200 capacity venue, I would say, so we're all standing for the whole time, but we were about 3 or 4 rows from the front, which was phenomenal. I couldn't hear anything at the end of it, obviously, because the front of house PA was going some. But what a great band, absolutely superb. And the first time I've seen them, first time Sue's seen them as well. It was the start of their European tour. And they're going through Stockholm, Oslo, Copenhagen, Hamburg, Munich, Stuttgart, all over the place in the next month. So that's really great. And then on the way back, had a very nice chat with Kyle and Jess on the BA 320 Neo on the way back. And we might even have a couple of new listeners, as I was a bit loose with my Plain Talking UK business cards. So that was good. Really great service from the guys there. And we got home last night at about 6:30. So just literally a flying visit to Stockholm just for a day and a night. But really, really worth it. And back to work next week, unfortunately. So
actually, I was going to ask you, Nev, when you're at an event like this, when there's big audio equipment and stuff like that, obviously this is your industry. This is what you know and what you've known all your life, pretty much.
The trouble is there is me going, I wonder what what monitor stack that is and what those wedges are down there. The sort of thing that I would do if I was going to a cinema. I wonder what projector they're using. This sort of stuff. But so no, it was great, fantastic gig. We weren't quite the oldest people there, but we weren't far off it. But that doesn't matter, I don't think. I think if you can enjoy music at any age, then, I mean, actually the band appeals to quite a wide age range, actually. But no, really, really good. So if you haven't heard them before, check out The Script, and you might be pleasantly surprised.
So more to the point, Nev, how were the flights? Would be obviously you said the crew were very good, but
just superb.
I take it you were 320ing it all the way there and back.
320 CEO on the way out and a Neo on the way back, and very nice it was too. The Neo is a very quiet aircraft, I must say, and especially on takeoff and the initial climb phase, it's a lot quieter than the current engine aircraft. But no, that was really enjoyable, really good. And as you may know, Carlos, we've been bumping into people that seem to know Nick Anderson. So I'm on the plane talking to one of the crew, and she says, "Oh yeah, I used to work for the same company that Nick used to work for, and we often would go down to Lagos on the 340. So yeah, I do know Nick." I'm going, "Oh, not another one." So, we're going to have a special segment, aren't we? People that know Nick Anderson.
It's a whole entire new podcast. People who know Nick Anderson. the podcast.
That fella needs bringing down a peg or two. He's far too famous for my liking.
He's far too famous, yeah.
I've got to say. But yeah,
if you're listening, Nick, can we have an autograph, please? Yeah, just
Well, yeah. Quite.
Anyway, we are obviously missing two members tonight. Unfortunately, Matt can't be with us tonight because he's very busy looking after, or he's dog sitting. Actually, he's been dog sitting all week, so he's busy dog sitting and taking dogs out for walk and etc. in the rain. And Armando can't be with us because he's Armando, isn't he? He's too busy flying here, there, and everywhere. But we have got a nice full chat room this evening. Just going to have a quick run through who's joining us in the live YouTube chat room this evening. Kicking off, as he does every week, because he's in there bright and early, it's Richard Adams. Hello to you. Mazoos, hello to you, Mazoos. Good to see you in there. We've got Dirk S. Hello to you, Dirk. Neville Bounds is obviously in there because he's got his blue spanner of doom ready. Bill Aronik, hello to you, Bill, as well. Captain Cruz, scrolling down the list here, make sure I don't miss anyone else out, and welcome to one and all for joining, and thanks for joining us this evening as well. I've been absent for a couple of weeks, as you all know. I've had a busy start to November, or an October as well, end to October, and busy start to November, but I'm back anyway for a while. I've got one more Friday off in December when I've got another party that I'm doing, but apart from that, I'm back in the hot seat this week, standing in for Matt, trying to press all the we shan't go there, Nev, we know what the beginning of the show was like, but anyway, if you are listening to our glorious voices via the realms of the audio show and you want to see us on the YouTube page, don't forget to check out our YouTube page. Look for us on there, Plain Talking UK, and hit the subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified when we are live, so you can join us in the chat room with everyone else who's joined us this evening in there. But yes, so we've got lots of news, haven't we, Nev, to get through this evening?
Plenty, yes, a lot of news, and some new segment of the show to talk about later on as well. So stay tuned for that. That'll be very interesting. I hope you'll agree. So,
yes. So I suppose you better. I better hit the commercial news button, haven't I? And hopefully,
that works.
This will work.
Captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
So kicking off this week's first news story then, and this one comes to us from the independent.co.uk, and it's a story that we've covered quite a few times actually, haven't we, Nev, over the few weeks, all about Doncaster Airport, and it's really sad news, this is. And the last flight was actually today. I did hear that on the radio today. The crew apparently were in tears as the last flight out of Doncaster Sheffield departed on Saturday the 31st of October to Katowice in Poland, signalling the impending permanent closure. The move was announced in September, despite former Prime Minister Liz Truss vowing to save Doncaster Sheffield Airport from shutting its doors for good. The airport was also recently voted best in the UK in a poll by Which Travel, based on people's experiences travelling through the airport during the peak season. Staff have been sharing their dismay, with one worker posting on Twitter on the 1st of November that was their last shift, and they were saying it's utterly heartbreaking to leave and say goodbye. Holidaymakers were also frustrated by the closure, with one telling BBC Look North, "I'm disgusted. What a waste of a good runway." Although there have been initial hopes of a last-minute takeover to save the airport, owners Peel Group have said that we're currently not in possession of what could be considered a credible offer. A petition was set up to save Doncaster Sheffield Airport, which has reached 105,000 signatures, and the impact on the South Yorkshire community is expected to include the loss of at least 800 jobs. Labour MP for Sheffield Heeley and Shadow Secretary of State Transport Louise Haigh said the closure is truly a slap in the face to hundreds of people whose jobs currently hang in the balance. Haigh added that the government has repeatedly refused to meet with the Mayor of South Yorkshire with the other regional leaders to discuss what other options are available. The Mayor of Doncaster, Ross Jones, tweeted the day before yesterday. He said that we are committed to continuing to work through every stage of the process in our efforts to save the airport, he added. Doncaster Council would begin the process of initiating a CPO or compulsory purchase order, which would be a longer term option due to it being open to legal challenges and taking around 2 years to put into motion. The airport itself is officially set to close following the final flight, which arrives into Doncaster Sheffield tomorrow, which is Saturday the 5th of November. That will be the final flight arriving into Doncaster Sheffield Airport. And I have to say, Nev, looking at the pictures which were on BBC News this week, which I've watched on the TV, it's by no means a small, insignificant airport building as such.
Well, the runway, this is the former RAF base Finningley, if you recall, and it's nearly 9,500 feet long, which is a quick calculation, 2,895 meters by 60 meters wide. So it's actually a very big runway. You could get plenty of big stuff off of there and going long distances. And at a time when we're always complaining about shortage of runway capacity. Now, I know it's not in the southeast, but nonetheless, I think this is a big deal. Same situation with Manston Airport. I mean, we're talking about Manston for other reasons now, of course, but, again, superb facility there, 10,000 foot of runway, roughly, same as Gatwick. And of course, these big facilities, once they're decommissioned, they very rarely come back. I'm thinking about places like Plymouth Airport, for example, in the southwest. And of course, all this real estate possibility for, it's going to be housing, isn't it? Or commercial property or whatever it is. I'm sorry, I just think the priority is all wrong here. It's difficult enough as it is to get decent runway availability here in the UK, and to close this facility and to actually, I don't think they've tried hard enough. I really don't. I think there's some investors out there that could make a real go of this, especially when you've got people like Wizz Air and those folks, who are offering, good value flights to, the former Eastern Bloc countries and all the rest of it. Again, would be a great facility. Actually, the transportation from Doncaster Airport to anywhere else isn't too bad. Trains and buses and what have you. So yeah, absolute. It's an unnecessary loss, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Nev. And like you said, the problem is that we know what will happen. There'll be developers who come in, flatten the whole lot, and that'll be housing or industrial estate. I'd imagine it might be like what happened with RAF Bentwaters here in Suffolk. Yeah. That when that was decommissioned quite a few years ago now, RAF Bentwaters, it's a huge site. It's massive. I've driven on there in the truck many times to collect stuff and that. Huge site. The runway is still there. Taxiways are still there, and all the original buildings, all the original barracks buildings, all the office buildings, the hangars, the silos which were there, which are huge silos I've got there, and they've all been repurposed.
What about the one at RAF Whitton as well, just north of Huntingdon, on the way to St Ives? That's again another former. I don't know whether it's a US base or an RAF one, but again, huge runway facility and all the rest of it. There are possibilities of having capacity around the UK that I just don't think are being explored, possibly in a positive way. So, but there we are. That's how it is.
Just looking in the chat room, Nev, Richard Adams is saying in there that Plymouth Council supposedly reopening the airfield, but it's been supposedly for several years.
I know.
Yeah.
Again, superb facility down there. Really nice regional operations. could have got, not the hugest of runways, obviously, but it, certainly good enough for European operations and for domestic UK operations, rather than taking the train. Those long distance, train journeys from, if you want to go from Plymouth to Aberdeen or something, that's quite a slog on the train. Whereas a flight is probably hour and a half or something, So, but there we go. That is.
We'll see what happens in the future. Hopefully, something good will come of it. All being well. Nice flight school, training school. That would be a good one. Yeah. Anyway, Nev, you've got the next story, and now, Nev, I know you're a big fan of Avios points, and I know that I've recently used some for my flights to the States for next year, which was the first time I've ever done that, which was quite interesting to do that. But what are your views on this story, Nev? I look forward to this.
Again, I think we're going backwards a little bit, but let's have a read of it and see what it says. It's on the independent.co.uk. And it says that the loyalty points collected by many British Airways passengers could be drastically reduced next year. A leading business travel expert has warned. On a London to New York round trip, the minimum Avios points earned by an economy class could drop by 30%, or possibly much more. Rob Burgess, who's editor of Head for Points website, spotted the revelation in an announcement by BA's sister airline Iberia. The Spanish carrier shares the Avios frequent flyer currency with BA, and the online message from Iberia promises a new way of earning Avios. The airline's Iberia Plus scheme previously awarded Avios points based on the distance flown, adjusted according to the category of ticket and cabin. With immediate effect, the key variable on the Spanish airline is the amount spent on the ticket. So frequent flyers who've achieved elite status, which is based on the number of flights taken in the course of the year, will continue to earn Avios at a higher rate than other travellers. Going forward, Iberia passengers will earn 5 Avios for each euro spent, and higher tier travellers will earn up to 3 additional points per euro. Sylvia Moran, Iberia's client loyalty director, said, "We think this is a more fair and transparent way to reward our more loyal members." The Iberia announcement includes a quote from BA's head of retail and customer relationship management, Ian Romane, revealing BA will follow suit next year. He said, "We congratulate our colleagues at Iberia for introducing this change, and we look forward to joining them in 2023. If the Iberia conversion rate is adopted and sterling euro exchange rates remain largely the same, for each £1 spent on British Airways passengers, they'll earn 6 points, or up to 10 points per pound for higher tier travellers. Passengers will also get points for money spent on seat selection and baggage, which are currently not taken into account." He says that the move will unlock even more opportunities for our members to earn Avios when they fly. But Mr. Burgess, who's the editor of Head for Points, ridiculed the claim in an article. He said, "I challenge anyone to give an example of how these changes will unlock even more opportunities for our members to earn Avios when they fly." When you have to resort to peddling claims like this, which literally don't make any sense, you've lost the argument. Crucially, the spend your points are based on the spend your points are based on does not take into account taxes, fees and charges, which can comprise a large part of the cost of a ticket. So on the cheapest BA flight from London Gatwick to New York JFK, costing £361 return, 44% goes on government taxes, including UK air passenger duty and airport fees. That's quite a staggering amount, isn't it? So if 6 Avios, I hope you're keeping up here. If 6 Avios are awarded for each pound spent, the economy passenger would earn 1,212 Avios, which is down 30% compared with the current minimum of 1,736 based on the same flight. Spending on the seat selection and or checked baggage would increase the points under the new system. Now, call me cynical, but fiddling around like this rarely is an advantage to the passengers, in my experience. You've got to tick a lot of boxes, and whilst they might, you'll see the headline being, of great benefit to the passengers, often it isn't. And I think that you have to go into a lot of detail to make sure you've qualified for all these things. But it'll be interesting to see how this pans out next year. I'm wondering whether Iberia announced it and BA were a little bit on the back foot when they said we congratulate them for announcing this, and we'll be joining them next year. I wonder whether they were arm locked into to going ahead with it. Perhaps, I don't know. We'll have to see. But it'll be interesting to see, because obviously the amount of flying I do at the moment, it's quite a significant amount of Avios that you can earn. But let's see what happens when they bring this in next year.
So what sort of difference would this make to you, the points that you are currently collecting then, Nev, with your flight?
Well, I collect points with the American Express card that I use primarily for business travel, but for other bits and pieces as well. And also, if you fly on BA as well, you get more Avios points that way. Once they start to put a cap on it, or they start to change the way it's calculated, then it can be quite a hit. I mean, you just need to do more flying. But it also means, though, for the people that don't fly as often as I do, perhaps those people that fly a couple of times a year, maybe just to see friends or a holiday, if the reduction is this amount, it's going to be significant. So, and you'll never get into any side of good method of earning. That's the problem. So, yeah, I think fiddling around with this sort of thing is never a great thing, because you think, why haven't they done it before? Are people earning too many Avios points for their liking? I don't know. But we'll have to see how it pans out. But I'm a little bit sceptical. But I'm happy to be corrected if it turns out to be marvellous.
Perhaps they're running short of Avios points, Nev, because you've got them all.
Well, that's it. You see, that's it.
You've emptied the Avios bank, Nev.
Yeah.
The BA have got none left.
That's good point.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
So the next story is coming to us from The Sun. It's always a good form of...
is our go-to aviation?
Go-to aviation is The Sun, uk.co.uk. And this is something actually... I mean, I do it, and I know Nev does it, and I think pretty much all of our listeners and everyone who watches the show does it. Stunned passenger stopped by crew because he took photos on board the aircraft. So a man was left stunned after he took a picture during his flight, only to be stopped by the crew while disembarking. Jeremy Dwyer from Seattle was travelling with American Airlines last week when he took a photo of the cabin. However, he claimed that the crew then stopped him from leaving the flight until he showed them the pictures that he'd taken. He later wrote on Twitter, "Honest question. Can a crew member physically prevent me from getting off the aeroplane until I show them the contents of my phone?" Then they wanted to see the last 3 photos to verify that he didn't take a photo that contained them in it. He added, "I was off the plane and the flight attendant and the captain prevented me from going further down the jet bridge and then brought me back onto the aircraft and took the phone out of my hands." He said American Airlines later got in touch with him to apologise, adding that crew are not allowed to touch his phone. An American Airlines spokesperson said someone had reached out to learn more about the customer's experience. It's not the first time this has happened. Other people shared stories on social media as well. One person said it had happened to him with a different airline, and the crew insisting him on deleting the photos that he'd taken during a flight. He was just taking photos of the cabin, nothing else. Frequent flyer and blogger Matthew Clint was kicked off a United Airlines flight back in 2013 after taking photos of his seat. The photo policies are mainly found on American Airlines, but Brits are maybe affected too. Its in-flight magazine, American Airlines, said the use of small cameras or mobile devices for photography and video is permitted on board, provided that the purpose is capturing personal events. Any photography or recording of other customers or airline personnel that creates a safety or security risk or that interferes with crew members' duties is prohibited. Everyone is advised to ask before taking any pictures and video on the plane that may feature other passengers or crew. Mr. Bounds.
I have one word, and the word is discretion. Crew discretion. We had something happen on our flight back from Stockholm, Arlanda, yesterday actually, and the crew handled, I'm not going to say what it was, but the crew handled it perfectly because they are experienced crew and they used their discretion. And what happened wasn't actually allowed, shall we say, but the crew used their discretion to minimise any problem. And that's what it's all about. Yes, there is the rule book, obviously, but then there's, as Martin Brundle would say, for those who don't know, Martin Brundle is a former F1 driver and now a commentator for Sky Sports. He would say in this situation, someone needs to take a sensible pill. And I think so often in life, generally speaking, not just in aviation, I think someone needs to use their discretion and be sensible about it. Escalating these situations is never good, is it? It never ends well. And here we are talking about it and potential some poor publicity for the airline, completely unnecessarily so as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, as my laptop goes into fan mode, I was going to say, Nev, I mean, you look on YouTube, all the bloggers and vloggers that are on YouTube doing videos all the time, you know, I mean, you know, I'm not going to mention any names, there's hundreds of them out there, but, you know, there's a few of them that are quite prolific, quite frequent vloggers on YouTube that video pretty much everything, passengers, crew, seats, everything like that, and they're still doing it. They're not being stopped.
No, and I think that this is, you see, this is what's happened with the smartphone generation, isn't it? And I think that if you are sensible, then there are no problems here at all. But we weren't there, obviously, so we can't comment on it. But it just seems to me that you've got to, when you're dealing with a situation where you are the potential offender or someone who has been offended, as it were, you know, I think just people need to be sensible about it. And as John Jester says in the chat room, discretion requires common sense, and that isn't allowed. He may have a point.
So I know it's something that could be up for discussion for quite some time, I think, when it goes to with things like this. I mean, everyone takes pictures. We all take videos. I take videos, you take pictures, and I've never had any issues all the years that I've been doing.
Do you remember that situation? I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but I'm talking about the discretion thing again. Do you remember that thing that happened in the Jersey Airport lounge when we were waiting to go back to the UK, and I decided to intervene a little bit just to be helpful. But obviously some people can't be helped. But those sort of situations, it's just kind of, I don't know. The trouble is, you see, we're in 2022 where everybody's offended by something, and it's social media and it's escalation, and it's just there's no stopping it, is there? Sometimes, no. But no, I like travelling with an experienced crew that use their discretion if something happens, which is not quite within the rule book, but they've chosen to ignore it or just to let it go because it's the easiest thing to do for everybody's benefit. So yeah.
Just reading in the chat room, Nev, Neil Lamworn says he's just got back from Poland yesterday, had a bit of a bumpy landing, had people crying, crossing themselves, screaming, and then clapping on landing.
Oh, it sounds like it's probably one of Captain Al's landings, I would venture to suggest.
A Ryanair one, I don't know. No, Nev, you've got the next story, and it's all about it's back on the pilots' contracts thing, proposed contracts for American.
Well, yeah, this is on simpleflying.com, and it says that the Allied Pilots Union has rejected the offer from American Airlines for its pilots to receive a 19% increase in pay over 3 stages for the next 2 years. This is in return means that the airline will need to reconsider a higher offer to fend off the struggles set out by the global pilot shortage and increased demand for air travel post-pandemic. The board decided to reject the 90% offer by 15-5, with board spokesman Dennis Taylor commenting, American's management is focused on keeping pay increases as low as possible and has ignored crew scheduling changes that the union claims will reduce the number of cancelled and delayed flights. Management's failure to invest in a pilot contract that levels up to meet passenger demand only creates more uncertainty for the holiday travel season and even next summer. This isn't the first airline to feel the pressure of the demands of its pilots, though, with rejection from United Airlines, close to 10,000 pilots at the offer of 14.5% over 18 months. In a statement released by the Airline Pilots Association, 94% of the 9,980 United pilots rejected the offer on the table from United, whilst Delta pilots voted unanimously to authorise a strike if no deal was reached with the Atlanta-based airline. The last major pay rise at Delta occurred in 2016, and negotiations had begun prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, as aviation came to a halt during subdued demand, negotiations started again in January this year. Even Southwest pilots have taken to picketing at their Dallas Love Field Airport, even though federal law prohibits this. These pilots stood in the hot sun, the protest including up to 1,300 pilots from the airline, highlighting the overall industry demand for better pay for the current high demand in air travel. Together, this identifies the pilots of the biggest 4 airlines in the USA, standing firm on their expectations and remediation for their expertise in the industry. Well, now I don't know much about pilot contracts, as you can imagine, but I would have thought that all of these folks have probably had to take a hit in the past. I know some UK airline pilots certainly have, in order to assist the company to get through some of the more difficult times. Now, there is an unprecedented demand for travel, no two ways about it. Certainly, I mean, Stockholm's not a very busy airport, but Heathrow certainly was again this week, as it is on most weeks. So I hope they can solve all this without resorting to strike action, on an ongoing basis, because again, that's going to give the airports and the airlines even more problems. But it just goes to show you, doesn't it, that I think there has to be some give and take on both sides probably, but generally speaking, some fair play has to take place here.
Yeah, I just it doesn't inspire the youngsters, Nev, to want to,
no,
get into the industry much.
Again, I was talking to a crew member on the way out to Stockholm this week, and she was saying it's the hours are pretty brutal now, and I was just thinking about that. Sometimes I feel quite tired if I've flown twice in a week, even short haul, but then these folks are doing it, they're doing 4 sectors a day, 5 sectors a day maybe, even on short haul hops with early starts, late finishes. And if you have a, recalcitrant passenger or some problem, with the aircraft, or it goes tech, or, your day gets extended, or you end up hoteling overnight somewhere where you didn't expect to be, it's pretty hard work for everyone, the flight deck crew and the cabin crew. So, these folks, all of them that operate the aircraft, work extremely hard. So remuneration needs to be in proportion to the effort put in, I would say. But then as I say, I'm not an accountant, nor am I an expert on airline pilots' contracts either.
So the next story, Nev, and this might shock you, so I hope you're sitting down.
Okay.
So this comes to us from simpleflying.com, and believe it or not, the Airbus A330 made its first maiden flight 30 years ago this week.
Good Lord.
30 years. I never believed that.
No.
So the Airbus A330 was and is an aircraft that pioneered the European plane manufacturer's success in the wide-bodied market. And this week marks the 30th anniversary of its maiden flight. The A330 was the company's first long-range twin-jet, allowing Airbus to offer longer-distance city pairs like Beijing to Melbourne, London to Tokyo. It was also the first aircraft to operate on 3 different engine types, with over 1,500 A330s built, and several loyal customers like Air China, Turkish Airlines and Delta Airlines, the aircraft's legacy, that will live on in aviation history. The A330 is a wide-body aircraft developed by Airbus back in the 1970s. Its conception came after the European manufacturer's first airliner, the A300, was introduced, which was already set to pioneer a large family of aircraft. In 1973, Airbus developed a longer range yet smaller version called the A310, I remember that one, and focused on the single aisle market shortly after with the evolution of the famous A320 family in the early 80s. Airbus decided to return to the wide-body market, and the manufacturer proposed the two aircraft, the A330, a lengthened version of the A300, and its bigger companion, the A340, the four-engine jet that would replace the 707 and Douglas DC-8s. By early 1986, Airbus Supervisory Board approved the development of the two aircraft, and the company could save around $500 million due to the jets having the same fuselage and wings. Further, Airbus said pilots flying on the wide-body aircraft would also appreciate operate the A320 with relative and little extra training costs. This is the worst part of this story. The wide-body aircraft were entering a market in competition with the McDonnell Douglas DC-10, which was an ugly, boring aircraft, and the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, which was obviously the world's greatest wide-bodied airliner ever made. However, Airbus had the upper hand as the A340 and A330 offered 25% more fuel efficiency with the same range and payload as its competitors. However, the 340 was developed first, as Airbus found that most of its customers at the time were opting for four-engine jets over twin jets. The A330 was Airbus's first long-range aircraft and could carry between 250 and 440 passengers, depending on the configuration. Cool, 440 Nev in a 330.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
And the twin-engine Dash 300 version, carrying 277 passengers, has an improved takeoff weight of 242 metric tons, which added 500 nautical miles of range, according to Airbus. It can now fly a maximum of 6,350 nautical miles, and its latest variant, the A330-900, has a maximum takeoff weight of 251 tons, compared to the A300s and the A330's earlier version, which was 8.46 metres longer than the A300, measuring 63.6 metres. While the A330 succeeded, Airbus decided to develop a re-engined aircraft called the A330neo, which we've all talked about on the show over the last few months. The aircraft type offered only the Rolls-Royce Trent 7000 turbofan, with improvements to its sharklets and 14% better fuel economy per passenger seat. The development of the newer model was to compete against the Boeing 787s regarding modern engines. While Airbus says the A330neo is still powering the family into the future with its new engine and wing technology, it has not reached, they said, the A330's level of success. This is because while most of the airline's fleets of the A330 are still relatively young, there is no need to swap out for more expensive versions. Nevertheless, the A330neo could again gain more traction amid the recent delays that have plagued the 787 deliveries. Now, having flown on the 330 a number of times with a few airlines, Virgin Atlantic being one, and also A330 we flew with Oman Air many years ago. I suppose it's how they're configured and it's how the seats are, I guess this, but I wasn't a huge fan. We flew, where did we fly? We flew in an A330 with Virgin to, I can't remember what it was now. Can't remember the destination, but it was bloody awful. I found anyway. A lot of people like the aircraft. I mean, the Neo, obviously, I'm yet to fly on the Neo, the 330 Neo. I know you've flown on, obviously, you've flown the 320 Neo, Nev. Yeah. Have you been an A330 person, Nev?
I've only flown a 330 twice. Once was with Emirates to Dubai in 2006 for an exhibition that we were doing over there. That was in economy. That was a nice very nicely appointed aircraft, actually, in terms of seats and comfort and what have you. And then the other one I went to when I went to Brazil. So I flew from Lisbon with TAP, Portugal, to Brazil. And that wasn't bad, actually. But as you say, configuration is all the thing. And the thought of 440 people being on that aircraft would give me a nosebleed just even thinking about it. But actually, it's been a very popular aircraft because it's been very versatile, because it can handle the, high density, short haul stuff, as well as some very good range out of the aircraft for the long haul stuff. And especially with the ETOPS certification and all the rest of it, it can go a very long distance. And now they're with the Neo versions, obviously they're getting even more range out of it because the airframe is even more efficient. So, but I've quite liked it, I must say.
Sorry, Nev, I'm just reading Dirk S's comment in the chat room.
Oh, well, yes.
Dirk, honestly, shake your hand, Dirk. Dirk S says, in my honest opinion, the classic A330 versions are the most unexciting wide bodies in existence.
Yes, I would agree with that. Although, have you noticed, if you look at a 330 on landing, it seems to be a very nose high, last 100 feet before it gets on the deck, doesn't it? It's just got a very sort of predatorial look about it, with the way that the landing gear is canted as well. But as I say, I've quite liked it. But they've, with the lack of the A340 now, primarily because of fuel saving and all the rest of it, they've got to do more with the 330, and obviously the Neo is going to do that. But I had not realised it was 30 years old. That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't until I saw that story this week when I found it online. Yeah. I'd never realised it was 30 years old.
No.
20 maybe push, but 30 years old.
As we say, as we get older, time seems to slip away a bit, doesn't it? So, by the way, what are you doing next week? Are you busy at all next week, Carlos?
Am I busy at all next week?
Have you got sort of 20 minutes free, would you say?
Yeah, I've got 20 minutes free. Yeah.
Well, Airbus wants you to design the livery for the A350 freighter test aircraft. Oh. So if you wouldn't mind doing that. And it's true, because it says it's on the UK Aviation.news. It says Airbus is calling on professional designers, amateur artists and students from across the world to submit design for the Airbus A350F rollout livery, and is offering some unique prizes for the winning designer. The design brief gives you over 1,000 square meters of creative space to showcase how the A350F benefits airlines around the world and uses the very latest technology to save fuel and reduce costs. There's no limit to colours or complexity, and the winning design will be adapted with the help of Airbus designers to be displayed on the first A350F. The winning designer will then be invited to the Paris Air Show in 2023, where they will be gifted a replica of the aircraft and their design revealed. In the following year, they will visit Airbus Toulouse to see their design rollout of the factory for its first flight wearing their design. But you've got to be quick. Entries must be made by the 28th of November. So don't hang about. I've not even thought about doing that. Mind you, I didn't pass my art exam at school, so I don't think I'm best qualified to, put in an entry particularly. But interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd like to design the design for that. I'd go with a nice blue sort of colour. I think, Nev, a nice sort of blue design, a bit like the Boeing sort of colour.
Yeah. Well, like yes, quite. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I wouldn't do though, Nev.
What's that?
Put a Zorro mask on the front of the aircraft.
Oh. Well. I think that's there to stay now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the Zorro mask is definitely there to stay. So what we got for the next story? This one is quite a sad story actually as well, because I've seen this on many films and many TV series that have been filmed here in the UK. And you probably, for our US listeners, you may well have seen this as well on some programs in the US, because it has featured in quite a few films. This one comes to us from airwaysmag.com, and the original MK 747 at Cotswold Airport, I should say, is to be scrapped. The beloved original MK Airlines Boeing 747 is set to be scrapped at Cotswold Airport and marks the end of an era for the aircraft. The disused aircraft has sat in pride of place at the airport since May 2009, operated in its final days by former cargo airline MK Airlines, based in Ghana. I've never heard of them, Nev. The plane is now 44 years old and has had a lifetime of service. The Golf Mike Kilo Golf Alpha started service with Cargo Lux and went on to fly for airlines such as Flying Tigers, FedEx, Atlas Air, Polar Air Cargo, before entering service with MK Airlines back in 2001, according to Fresh Aviation. Cotswold Airport repossessed the aircraft back 10 years ago and has been used as all sorts of things, as a party plane, hosting a number of corporate events and weddings over the years, although it's recently been replaced with a unique and more extravagant party plane, which I know, Nev, you know all about, the BA, is it the Nagus one?
Yes, yeah.
Which they've replaced it with. The decision to scrap the Boeing 747 was not taken lightly, according to the statement released earlier this week, which adds that the aircraft has suffered significant damage over the years. Countless aviation fans and residents have commented, expressing their grief at the news. And an announcement on the 24th of October from Cotswold Airport stated, "Sadly, the end of an era, as it's time for this old bird to be recycled, having sustained significant storm damage over the years and safety concerns with the fuselage. We've taken the tough decision to scrap Golf Mike Kilo Golf Alpha." So there we go. So one for the key rings, Nev, I think.
It's another one gone, isn't it? Yeah. God, dear.
I remember seeing this. They've used this on quite a few BBC TV drama series, actually, here in the UK. Dirk S is saying more airplane parts for Carlos to snatch.
Wow, very true. Very true.
But do you remember seeing this one, Nev? This was featured. Do you remember the Top Gear series when they used to do a few little kind of blitzes around the track there, and you could see this in the background on the programme? But this will probably end up as key rings, I'd imagine. Nev.
Well, as Richard Adams says, MK makes key rings.
There we go.
Brilliant.
Well done. So, Nev, we've got sad news for anyone wanting to fly from Heathrow soon.
More industrial action, potentially, just in case we hadn't had enough of it recently. But on simpleflying.com, it says that ground personnel at Heathrow are planning a 3-day strike beginning on November the 18th. It's estimated that over 700 workers plan to participate in the walkout. The workers plan to strike for better wages and benefits, and the strike will occur in the days leading up to the World Cup, which begins on November the 20th. It's unclear if the workers plan to strike during such a busy period for air travel or if it's coincidental timing. Regardless, it will significantly impact European air transit during a busy travel time. Well, the staff that plan to participate in the strikes include ground handlers, airside transport and cargo workers employed by third-party companies Menzies and Donata. The Workers' Union Unite stated that the strikes would cause significant disruptions in flight schedules at Terminal 2, 3 and 4. It noted that Qatar Airways would be particularly affected by the strike, as it will be operating 10 flights a week to Heathrow during the World Cup. The union noted that several other airlines will also be affected, including Singapore, Emirates, Virgin Atlantic and Cathay Pacific. The disruption will likely cause delays across the industry, as many large air carriers are forced to delay international flights. In addition to regular air travel, thousands of passengers travelling for the World Cup will likely be affected by the strike. Many travellers looking to visit the US for the national Thanksgiving holiday may also find that their flights have been delayed. If these these delays persist following the strike's termination, effects may also be felt in the US, as the week of Thanksgiving, of course, is one of the busiest travel weeks of the year. The union has made it clear that regardless of how large the impact on air travel schedules is from the strike, the workers it represents will continue to demand fair wages, Unite officer Kevin Hall stated. Strike action will inevitably cause disruption, delays and cancellations to flights throughout Heathrow, with travellers to the World Cup particularly affected. However, this dispute is entirely of Donata and Menzies' own making. They have had every opportunity to make a fair pay offer, but have chosen not to do so. Negotiations are ongoing, which means that the strike may be entirely avoided if an agreement is reached before November the 18th. When asked about the effect this strike will have on airport operations, a spokesman for Heathrow told Simple Flying, "We are aware of proposed industrial action from Donata and Menzies' colleagues at Heathrow, and we are in discussion with our airline partners on what contingency plans can be implemented to support their ground handling should the strike go ahead. Our priority is to ensure passengers are not disrupted by airline ground handling shortages." Well, we all know what happened recently, don't we, with lack of ground handling staff, baggages and luggage and all sort of catering, all sorts of delays and what have you. So let's hope that they can come to some sort of arrangement before the 18th of November. Just here in the UK, actually, we've just had a train strike, a railway strike, just finished at the last, or been averted at the last minute, literally, because it was going to go ahead tomorrow. So let's hope the same can happen with this, if everybody negotiates and gets around the table and is sensible about it. But yeah, I mean, this will be a big effect on those airlines, especially at such a busy travel time as well.
Yeah, it's a shame after everything that we've been through over the last couple of years now, and the industry's been hit really hard, and everything's now starting, well, hopefully starting to get back to some sort of normality as such with passenger numbers, and now you're going to get another knock now. Strikes.
Why can't we? Yeah, I know. It's sort of one step forward and two steps backwards all the time, isn't it, in this industry at the moment? Why can't we just have 2 steps forward, then another 2 steps forward? Would be nice, wouldn't it? Just as a as a concept. But there we are.
Moving on to the next story. I'm trying to find a happy story here. Well, actually, this next story is quite happy. Actually,
it is.
Fair.
Yes.
This one comes to us from WizAir.com. There we go. And apparently Wizz Air have been named the Global Environmental Sustainability Airline of the Year at the World Aviation Awards. Say that after 2 bottles of Pinot Grigio. Wizz Air, Europe's fastest growing airline, has this week been announced and Global Environmental Sustainable Airline Group of the Year at the inaugural CAPA, or Centre for Aviation, Asia Aviation Summer and Sustainability Expo in Singapore. The airline also received recognition as the EMEA, or Environmental Sustainability Airline of the Year, and the CAPA Environmental Sustainability Awards for excellent recognised airlines and airports who put climate change at the forefront of their business and strive for carbon neutrality. The awards are independently researched by CAPA's analysts and carbon reduction strategists. Invest Global CAPA and part of the Aviation Week network is one of the world's most trusted sources of marketing intelligence for the aviation and travel industry. Wizz Air are proud, they said, to have the lowest CO2 emissions per passenger per kilometre in Europe, and they're committed to further reducing CO2 emissions by 25% by 2030. They say as part of an ambitious fleet renewal plan, the airline has been continuously adding new aircraft to the fleet, like the Airbus A321neo, and currently operates one of the youngest and most fuel-efficient fleets in the world, with an average age of 4.6 years old. Wizz Air is the biggest operator of the Airbus A321neo in Europe and has one of the largest standalone order books globally of over 370 state-of-the-art A321neo aircraft, which will help the airline to meet its sustainability targets. And on top of fleet renewal, the operational teams are constantly working on fuel efficiency initiatives to improve the related data science. So, I mean, You keep hearing this all the time now, Ned. We do stories about this all the time, about winning awards for this, that and the other. At the end of the day, everything still emits some sort of emissions of some degree.
Yes.
You know, we've not got to the stage yet where airlines are blowing potpourri out of the exhausts. or you know...
I tell you what, though, aren't Wizz doing well at the moment in terms of new aircraft orders and all the rest of it? They're really going for it, aren't they? Big time.
I'll tell you what, they've done a really good turnover in my second home, Malta. They've got a really good little base there at Malta now with regular flights into there, and that's very popular. I'm yet to fly on Wizz actually, Nev. I've not had a chance to fly on Wizz yet. Have you?
No, not at all. Perhaps we need to find someone that works there that could help us.
We do need to find someone who works at Wizz.
I'll do some work on that. See what we think about it. Yeah.
If you've flown on Wizz, let us know. Send us some feedback. We'd love to hear what Wizz are like.
I think Neil Landwall may have flown on Wizz. I'm not sure. He'll tell us in the chat room, or have I just made that up? I just thought I'm sure he mentioned it on one occasion, but he'll tell us in the chat room shortly.
Actually, I'm just reading in the chat room on the subject of Neil Landwall. He says they can afford new aircraft because they charge between £12 and £30 to choose a seat.
Ah, well, there you go, you see. And he also says he flies Wizz all the time.
Oh, so I just
can't be that bad.
Yes, they can't be all that bad. I would imagine, Nev, if I had to guess, I'd say they're probably very similar to our very own Ryanair or EasyJet.
Yes, possibly. But I'd like to try it out one day. I think we should find a route to go on. We'll do a little report, shall we?
We'll do a PTUK a special NPE.
Yeah, we should do. Yes, that's a good idea. Yeah, I'll think of somewhere to go. We'll see if we can do a report.
Me and Nev will disappear for the weekend. I'm sure the wives won't mind.
No, it'll be fine. No, they won't even know. Won't even miss us.
So, Nev, you've got the next story.
Yes. Now, here's a question for the audience. What would be your dream airline if you could design anything?
That's a good question, Nev.
It is, isn't it? Yes. And 1 mile at a time are asking this question. And, well, people say they want to make a lot of money, so I should probably start an airline, said nobody ever. But nonetheless, that doesn't stop people from trying to launch new airline concepts. After all, it's an industry of passion. So here's the latest, questionable perhaps, airline startup data. Beyond is an airline startup that claims to be launching in early 2023. The airline has a pretty website. So here's what the company is promoting as of now. The airline will fly non-stop from the Maldives to up to 60 destinations around the globe, including in Europe, Asia, Africa, and even Australia. Initial destinations will include Dubai, Hong Kong, Milan, Munich, Paris, Singapore, Taipei, Vienna, and Zurich. And Riyadh also. Missed that out, sorry. The airline will fly Airbus A321 Neos with just 68 fully flat business class seats in a 2x2 configuration. That sounds similar to La Compagnie's A321 Neos, if you recall. The airline will offer baggage check-in at home, premium transfers to the airport, a special lounge, and Michelin star in-flight cuisine. The parties behind the airline are the Simdi Group, which is a Maldivian company that provides products to the hospitality industry, and Arabesque, which is a UAE-based investment firm. Now, these all business class airlines have had a bit of a mixed, not mixed reviews, but just mixed operations, really. Some of them have not been very successful over a long period of time, and they've had to stop it because they just can't make the numbers work.
Didn't we have an airline many years ago, Nev? I think they were based at Stansted. They operated the 767 Silverjet. Yeah. Silverjet. It was one at Silverjet that were based there. Yes. And they had that similar idea of operating an all kind of business class. I think it was all business class 767 when they flew.
Yeah.
And that didn't That lasted a few years, I think, but it didn't last for very long. And we've also haven't we had another one, Nev, since then? Done long haul, not La Campagne, but there was. I'm sure there was another one, Nev.
There was, and there was one actually that used to operate out of Manston back in the day as well. I'll look that up in a minute 'cause I can't remember what it was. I'm sure someone in the chat room will tell me. This. Well, obviously, I hope it's successful, but the track record of this kind of operation is not great. Now, it depends on what the fares are going to be, I guess, and who's going to be flying them. But, well, let's see, if they are serious about it, and we haven't got very long to wait before they do launch it. Let's see what they come up with. But obviously with the A321neo, that is quite a long range aircraft these days as well, isn't it? So they've got the range to do these longer trips, and with just 68 people on board, with that kind of payload, you've got a very long range, I would imagine. So let's see. Yeah,
Neil Lamorne has just put in the chat room XL, or was it June?
Yeah, that's right.
June.
Yes. Yeah. XL was one I was thinking of, Neil. Yeah.
So La Campagne, they're still going, Nev?
Yes.
They are still going, yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing is just one of them things that I just in the current climate, with the way things are in the world at the moment, especially in the UK, with the price of heating and all the rest of it, all our utilities stuff, people haven't got the money to go out and spend on posh flights.
No, and also if they're attracting or trying to attract the business community, I mean, I know a lot of my industry colleagues that aren't allowed to fly anymore unless there's a very good reason for it, or if they're flying, then it's economy or premium economy. They're not allowed business class flights, so they've got to be careful about how they pitch this. But obviously they have identified a sector of the market that is ripe for this. I hope they can make it succeed, obviously. So let's see how they do.
Well, that is where we bring the commercial news segment to a close, but we have got a very special segment coming up next, haven't we, Nev? What is this bit? Because we gave a teaser on it last week, didn't we?
Oh, yes. This is, Armando doesn't do very many interviews, but when he does, they are really good. They are phenomenally good. And you never quite know what's going to be coming up. So I haven't had a chance to read the full story on this, but he's interviewing a fella called Stuart Airey. And I noticed there was a bottle of whiskey being shared between them as well. So obviously the start of the interview is very, calm and what have you. But as we get towards the end, perhaps, people are being a bit more, how should we say, loose-tongued with what they're saying and what have you. Having said all that, it's a fascinating interview with Stuart. So why don't we play it out and let's see what Armando and Stuart got to say.
Hey, everybody. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear this interview with Stuart Airey. Now, Stuart and I were both here in Denver, Colorado at Flight Safety for PC-12 recurrent training. We were actually sim partners, and believe it or not, it's pretty rare that you just hit it off so well with your sim partner. But despite not knowing each other, we discovered that we both had the same approach to flying the Pilatus, the same approach to safety. So we actually had a really, really good time in the simulator for the couple days, and nobody ever says that. We had actually just finished a simulator session when we recorded this. So we came back to my hotel, we recorded the interview in the lobby. So you're going to hear some background noises. Apologies for those, but we decided to, after a sim session, pop a bottle of adult beverage and just learn a little bit about Stuart, his background, and his history with the Royal Flying Doctor Service in Western Australia, something that he did for quite a few years before moving on to flying corporate in India. Everybody, enjoy this interview.
You have how many hours in the Pilatus?
I'd say around about 3,500 now.
Okay, that's a lot of time in one airplane.
Yeah.
And most of that. So how'd you get into aviation?
Funny story that. I being from Australia, I went to what was then the Army officer training establishment, which was the Royal Military College, Duntroon. Nowadays they have a tri-service one, which is called ADFA. But anyway, I went there when I was 17. I had a bit of an injury, sustained the injury, and the Army at the time weren't really looking to put a great deal of officers through to graduate them. So there was a bit of pressure that, there was a wastage rate type thing there. And I thought, well, I really didn't want to be in Ordnance Corps, although it's important.
Yeah.
I, at the time, was fairly physical and liked to get out and do things. So I thought, well, what's a dishonest way of making a living? Go flying. So I investigated that a bit and I was actually working about 3 jobs to put myself through it.
What were the opportunities at the time? So, like, how
well,
at the time,
generally,
how
what happens in Australia is there's a lot of, particularly my side of the country, which is Western Australia, there's a lot of mining, and it's a very large area. It's around about a third the size of the continental United States. So it's a very large area. Air transport is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Very few people, about 2.5 million people spread over the size of a third of continental USA. That means you need to have a lot of flying going on. So there's a lot of fly in, fly out with mining, etc. But at that particular time, when I got my CPL, which was in 1984, I basically was still working some work, looking for some work, and I ended up going up in 1985. I got in my car and drove up to the top end of Western Australia, and my first job was flying a Cessna 152, this bashed and battered thing. The only thing that worked in it, instrument-wise, was a compass, and I made sure that the one little old engineer that we had that swung properly, and it was mapped to ground. So basically there was nothing, no DG, no nothing. VSI would occasionally splutter into, so it was seat of the pants flying.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay, what a young guy really should be doing. That was when I was about 20, and then I quickly got a job flying a Cessna 182RG and a Cessna 207 for a small charter company in a place called Kununurra, which was where I had been working for the vets. Interesting, just going back to the 152, that was in support of a veterinary program to eradicate brucellosis and tuberculosis in Australia.
So
it was quite a successful campaign. It was interesting flying, finding some of these airstrips out in the middle of nowhere.
And we'll get into it. But, so you discovered purposeful flying early on. Flying for a mission, flying for a purpose.
Yeah. I found that I wouldn't have said I was overly enthusiastic in terms of, it's like a young guy going a long way. But it kind of, it was kind of, my family and my friends were really like, wow, you're doing that.
Yeah.
And it's great. So kind of fast forward a bit on that, I worked till the end of 1985 until the wet season, what we call the wet season, which is the monsoon season in the northern part of Australia, kicked in. And then I went, the company kind of contracted up all of it. They only kept the core pilots, and I was one of them. So I went back to Perth, spent the summer down in Perth, which is my home city. And then I applied for a job at a charter company up in Newman, which is a iron ore mining town. So I worked there for a couple of years. Got enough hours that I thought it was about time, because I was only flying VFR, and I was flying up to a 310, Cessna 310R, which is pretty good. Young guy flying without an instrument rating, and so I thought, well, I better go and get an instrument rating. So then I headed back up north to the Northern Territory, to Darwin, did my instrument rating there, got a job with a charter company there. My first posting was out in an Aboriginal community where I lived with soon-to-be wife, and we stayed there for not that long, probably only about 8 months, and then I liked the company that I was working for, and I liked the guy that I was working for. But I said, look, have you got a job in Darwin, because my wife's pregnant, and et cetera, et cetera. He said, no, I don't. And I said, well, look, okay, I understand. So I got a job with a company that's still in existence today in the Northern Territory, and albeit it's different ownership and different business now, called Air North. And Air North at the time were conducting a lot of charter and what they called at the time low capacity RPT, Cessna 310, Cessna 402, Cessna 404, 441, scheduled services.
Wow, okay.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
And we worked our butts off, okay, seriously. When I left there, I had done 871 logbook hours, and it's all single pilot. You write tickets, you throw the mail bags, you take the baggage on and off, you've got animals in cages, you've got people trying to squib you on the tickets.
Like Alaska bush flying style.
Yeah, very much so.
You do realize that flying in Australia to the rest of us is like something exotic, where it's either a bucket list item, or like me, I would pay for a vacation to Australia to go do this kind of stuff. You're doing it for a job.
Yeah, that's because you're an aviation junkie.
Yeah.
But it was hot, sweaty, hard work. And I tell you what, I didn't put too many pounds on when I was at that age. So, and then that company, unfortunately, they had a parent company that were a mining company. And the parent company, in spite of the fact that we were making good profit, we were doing pretty well. They decided they were going to churn the aeroplanes into mining equipment as assets. Yeah. And the writing was on the wall. So I decided to go back to the other company that I'd worked for, where I'd been remotely based at Maningrida in Arnhem Land. But because I had plenty of experience there, I've been flying sort of 441 down. I was flying chieftains and stuff, and was a training and check captain with them. So at that point in time, I worked for them for a good 2.5 years. They were good, not like the owner. He was a crusty old guy and said it as it was. Fantastic old guy. Anyway, Aussie Osgood was his nickname. It was his name, but Aussie wasn't his real name, but everyone called him Aussie Osgood. And he was, this is in the days when he'd chat down the predecessor of Cassidy, kick him out of a hangar and all this sort of stuff. He's a great guy, really good personality. But the money's not real great flying around in the chieftain, and the career prospects. I'm not a young family, so there was 2 options for me: go to airline, or stay in GA but go to something that's a bit more secure. There were some secure companies around that were paying better, one of which was the Flying Doctor Service. And the Flying Doctor Service had a very good reputation, and deservedly so. Yeah. Fantastic organisation. So I went there thinking I had won the jackpot in aviation, because good equipment, that paid you pretty well, gave you a house, looked after you. And for a young guy, relatively young, with a small family, just the best. So I went in as the boggy there and kind of learnt the ropes. And,
RFPS. So a lot of people know about them. But
let me give you a bit of background. So
because it's a very special.
The Royal Flying Doctor Service essentially commenced operations in a way in 1928. There's a fellow by the name of John Flynn, Reverend Flynn, and he was instrumental in having a vision that people in the bush wouldn't suffer because people in the city don't. And part of that was he teamed up with what was then the fledgling or predecessor to Qantas. Okay. So they had their first run was in I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those.
And they leased him an airplane, right?
Yeah, they did, and they gave him a pilot, and that's where it came from. And of course, over the years, that model of retrieving people that were in need, taking them to a hospital, enhanced, and it's when I left the organisation in 2008, the end of 2008, it had got to the point where there were around about 60 to 70, and I couldn't be sure exactly now, aircraft that the Flying Doctor Service Australia-wide had. Mostly they were multi-turbine. In fact, they were all multi-turbine when I left, except for the Pilatus fleet. Yeah. And the Pilatus fleet's pretty sizable.
Like King Airs, right? Because I know they're getting new
350s.
So
they got 360s.
Yeah.
360s now. Yeah. My knowledge aside from my friends, feedback from my friends, I've still got a couple of friends that work there. In Western Australia section, because of the size of the country, they've gone a little bit of a different way. They have a backbone fleet of PC-12s, 47s and NGXs. 47E, I mean the NGs and the NGXs. I'm not sure how many they have now, and they also have 3 PC-24s.
Okay.
You know, one of the issues that we always had, and I'll just take a step, I'll just digress slightly there. I ended up being the Deputy Chief Pilot for the Flying Doctor Service in Western Australia, and Chief Pilot approved, and a delegate to CASA, and all of the sorts of things. You carry around a bag full of qualifications associated with all that, which was a wonderful thing.
Well, from my viewpoint, that's admirable. I mean, it's arguably one of the most, humanitarian and benevolent organizations in aviation, known worldwide.
And tough work.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, that is the toughest job. Single pilot aeromed, day, night, all weather. It's tough.
Not a lot of infrastructure either, right? Until GPSs came around and we had, at least, I don't know if some of the airfields have GPS approaches or anything like that, but when we were talking about a couple of days ago how I think for anybody that outside of Australia, it's hard to comprehend the vastness.
Yeah, I can give you a bit of an idea of how vast it is and how sparse the infrastructure is. So you're talking about the third of the continental USA landmass with about 750 airstrips. Yeah. And they range from your cow-cocky or outback farmers, airstrip that lands is 152 on, to the capital city airport. So I used to manage the database, so I'm fairly aware of that aspect of things. And we were quite unique just in that one respect alone. Before I'd left, a couple of years before I left, what we've done is we've negotiated with Honeywell and Jefferson to include all those airstrips in our onboard Garmin GPSs that were in the PC-12 and also the King Airs, although the King Airs went. And on the understanding that we reported a certain format to them and surveyed it a certain way, and they accepted that, and they included it as a ring-fenced database that they would provide us to load up into.
And that's military level stuff where you're
stuff.
doing your own survey that a company is putting out there for the rest of the public.
Yeah.
What were some of these airstrips like? So you said capital city airports. We get it right. So.
Well, I can tell you that they range from sort of an airport where there's no lighting, dirt strip, gravel strip, maybe if you're lucky, 1,000 metres long, no lighting. You're tasked to go in there at night. How do you land at night? Well, I can tell you how I've landed at night on a 1,000 metre airstrip in a PC-12, we used to brief the landowner or the station owner of what was required. They actually had a plan of how to lay out a flare path, and we would provide them with the flares. If they did not have the flares, the default situation would be you burn whatever you need. You put it at either end, on either side of the runway,
Wow.
and halfway in the middle, and you burn it. And it could be a tyre, it could be whatever. And you could be landing on that, and that is a true story. Okay?
Oh my goodness.
That's very true.
Yeah.
A lot of the flare, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen a flare pot. It's like a round grenade with a lump at the top of it. You fill it up with kerosene, has a wick in it, and burns. And they sit it in a hole room by the side of the runway. So they could go and space it down like that. The other alternatives are we land on roads regularly. Mm-hmm. I mean, we gazetted public roads, so like the Finnish Air Force does, and you know, basically the same deal.
Yeah.
Now, in Western Australia, the average single lane each way is 9.8 metres across.
Okay.
You get pretty good at holding centre line, as you probably noticed. I don't wander off centre line too much. The way that we trained pilots was doing it in the aeroplane. We didn't have a sim. We would go out and do it. And we would have someone on the ground who would put out various flare paths. Now, landing on the roads, that's an interesting thing because in different parts of Western Australia there was different setups. And for instance, in the area that runs from Perth, in sort of a straight line across via Adelaide to Melbourne, it's called the Nullarbor. In the Western Australian part of it, the Nullarbor, one of the sections before amalgamation of the three sections in Western Australia occurred was called Eastern Goldfields section. They had a different setup. So what they would do is they'd put 4 flares so that you could find the airstrip, go on, and everything was timed at night. It's all IFR, okay? You fly over centre of the runway, you time 10 seconds outbound, rate 1 turn to downwind, obeying the touchdown zone, drop the gear, time 15 seconds, head in the cockpit, you don't look out because you can't afford vertigo in a black hole, straight back in or on the autopilot, which is probably the safer way of doing it. After 15 seconds, you autopilot off, make a rate 1 turn, descending turn, and mid-base, then you look out, okay? Now, in their case, what you do is you line up the first flare on the left-hand side of the approach end of the runway with the last flare on the opposite side of the runway, okay? And you take your cue from that to turn onto final. And they had a series of reflectorised plates. And what those plates did was were they were put down the side of the runway, and when you got to 300 feet above ground level, the landing lights of the aeroplane pick up the reflectorised plates, and you might as well have been at an international airport.
This is genius.
Ingenious stuff.
So, and these are, so I've never heard of anything like that. So it's all just locally developed over the years by just sheer experience by the RFDS.
And different sections develop different doctrines. Very interesting.
Yeah, because it's very different geography and weather.
They still use that today. When I lived up in the northwest of the country, and when we did road landings, we had the lamps.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the lamps that you see on the side of the road that they light up when they're doing road construction, that kind of thing. So that's what we used. Or we used the flare pots.
Yeah.
Okay. They just, when I left there, they were just starting to get into the thing of putting that's it, and having the battery pack LED lights and stuff like that. One of the problems with the LED lights at night is it destroys your night vision.
Yeah, it's almost too bright, isn't it?
It is. Okay. Incandescent bulbs don't. So very interesting techniques involve time turns. You put the gear down at exactly that point, time from that point, this and that. This is all military kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we had quite a few military manoeuvres actually, including cloud break procedure in the PC-12 that I mentioned earlier, but I won't go into that now. But overall, a fantastic organisation. I can't speak more highly of the pilots and the engineering staff there. You cannot push 1,800 hours into a Pilatus PC-12 a year without there being a lot of dedicated people, good organisation. We used to have, when I was senior, we had Friday morning prayers, I used to call them, and the English who served in the military probably know what that means. And we'd have a half-hour meeting where we covered everything. We did, the pilot stuff. We did the nursing stuff. We did the medical, the doctors, the medical staff. We did corporate, and it ranged from and engineering, of course. They're wonderful. Those guys, just wonderful. And it would range, and the way it would structure is each group would say what was programmed, what was done last week, what the program for the upcoming week was, and then personnel matters.
Yeah.
Okay, and you each had a 6-7 minute window. Minute it sent out, everyone was on the program.
Discover the pioneers of speed and adventure at one of the UK's most iconic museums. Whether it's a tour of the legendary Concorde, a walk around the Brooklands aircraft factory, or maybe a behind-the-scenes look at the McLaren automotive cars, the Brooklands Museum has it all. Based at Weybridge in Surrey, it's the perfect day out for all the family. We can also host your private function or meeting in one of our amazing event suites. With so much to see and do, come and take a look at Great Britain's history of speed and flight. Find out more by going to www.brooklandsmuseum.com or give us a call on 01932 857 381. That's 01932 857 381.
Well, Nev.
Well, what a phenomenal 23 minutes that was. My goodness me.
Cast your mine back, Nev. We were saying while we were watching that, back to years ago. I used to watch it with my mum, the Flying Doctors series on, was it BBC One, I think it was on?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating.
Well, the challenging flying that goes with that is just phenomenal, isn't it? And, there's more to come. We've got another part 2 coming up next week. That Armando's done, and I mean,
you always think when I was going
on,
to say when you're flying somewhere like in the US, you've got loads of stuff. You've got loads of big cities and places and big big areas of built up places and buildings. Whereas, having not been to Australia, but when you see it on TV, you've just got nothingness for miles.
Yeah. And also the responsibility of getting in. I was nearly said to the airfield. I mean to the bit of dirt that you'll be landing on, especially if you've got important medical supplies on board, or you're taking a casualty somewhere. There must be a lot of pressure on the operating captain to make sure that they get in. But obviously, if the weather's below acceptable minima, for example, that must be difficult, mustn't it? So I think Armando's going to talk to Stuart about that in the next part, actually. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Brilliant.
Yeah, some good notes in the chat room about that. So I think people enjoyed that one, Nev.
Yeah, very much.
Our lovely listeners enjoyed that.
Yep.
Right.
Excellent.
So Nev, what's up next on the show?
Oh, we've got a caption this just for fun. No prizes for any of this at all, but we have had some very amusing.
I'll pop it up on the screen. Here we go.
Let's do that. Yes, and let's describe it first of all. It's a what's that? Cessna 150.
I think it's a 150. Yeah,
150. With a couple of bicycles on the top. So obviously this has given us the opportunity for comedy. Let's start off, shall we? John says, wife to husband. Yes, I know you've brought the bikes, but do you have to wear lycra to fly in it?
Stuart says he'd heard that taking his bike to work would help save the environment.
Haha. Chris says, this is our new all-electric aeroplane. As the standards require, we have redundant backup power supply on board.
Good one. Stuart says the lesser spotted British tourist on a UK bank holiday.
Oh, that's true enough, isn't it? Jenny says, just in case, question mark.
Question mark. David says, we are just winging it, our cycling holiday.
Oh. Stuart says, oh, heck. That's not what he really says. Oh, heck. Where's the roof box? Like it.
And Bill says, the UK-based aircraft modifier revealed its new design on the same day that Liz Truss became PM, with the following statement: we guarantee our design will be just as successful and long-lived as the new PM. Well, we know they didn't last long, didn't we, Nev?
Bill, you are naughty. But it's a great comment, though. Absolutely superb. Simon says, it's not about the age of a plane necessarily. It's mostly about the cycles it's had. And this one's only had 2. You see what I did there?
I like that. And this is my personal favourite for me from Sean, who says, Peloton are getting desperate.
Sums up
I
nicely,
have to
doesn't
say, I did enjoy that one.
Yeah.
But let's have a quick look in the chat room, see if we've had any comments in the chat room, Nev.
Let's have a look. Richard Adams says tandem seating. Captain Crew says gives new meaning to Cessna Caravan. Dirk S. Flying Dutchman.
Flying Dutchman. Very good.
Another one from Richard. Up there, you can often drive 5 to 6 hours without seeing another car. Oh, actually, that was in reference to the previous interview. I would imagine. Maybe it is.
It fits in well with that,
Yeah,
to be fair.
It could apply to both, really, couldn't it?
Yeah. No, thank you for everyone who commented on that. It's back. It's going to be back this week. And it's had a bit of a hiatus, as they caption this. But it'll be back next week in full effect with another fresh picture on our Facebook page. So if you don't already follow us on Facebook, don't forget to go and check us out on Facebook, Plain Talking UK. And on Wednesday, I'll be popping up another picture on there for you all to leave your humorous comments on for us to talk about on the show. So I suppose it's that time, isn't it, Nev? Is that your favourite time again, isn't it, Nev? Would you like
to? It's you and me doing the military.
Would you like to introduce your favourite part of the show, Nev?
Oh, well, I'm impressed that Armando has allowed us to do some of the military. So you must have some trust in us. But it's time for the military, ladies and gentlemen. Off we go.
What's up, bogeys? 13550, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay. Undersea boogie.
Is a little bit of an update from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the story is from KyievPost.com. News came out this week that Ukrainian commandos blew up 3 helicopter gunships at a Russian military airfield close to the Latvian border in what is considered one of the most spectacular behind-the-scenes raids launched by either side since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. This was confirmed by multiple sources on Tuesday, November 1st. The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine said in a Monday, October 31st statement that the attack took place at the Russian Army's Veretye airbase in northwestern Pskov region. The facility is more than 500 kilometers as the missile flies from Ukraine to the south and some 110 kilometers from NATO member Latvia to the east. Now, 2 Ka-52 attack helicopters were destroyed completely, and a third was badly damaged by detonation charges placed by Ukrainian operatives that infiltrated in and out of the site without being detected. That's according to the GUR statement. Now, Russian security teams subsequently found a 4th helicopter rigged with explosives that had not gone off, according to some news reports. Now, as we know, some of these special operations missions take a lot of planning and a lot of support from different sectors of the military. But to conduct any military operation deep inside enemy lines is a very significant accomplishment, especially for the special forces of Ukraine. Now, militarily, will this have a big impact? Probably not, but as we know from many conflicts before, having a small victory that is more of a psychological, a propaganda victory, and just a sort of a demonstration and a show of force that they can go behind enemy lines to execute an attack like this is pretty significant. So well done to the Ukrainian Special Commandos.
Thank you for that, Armando. That makes you ask a question, I suppose, Nev, is when is this all going to be over?
I've just got the feeling it's going to drag on for some time. There's every week, well, every day almost, new things are happening there. Very unpredictable what's going to be happening. So, well, I'm sure we'll be talking about this for many weeks and months, sadly. Great that Armando's doing some reporting for us and keeping us up to date with the latest news.
So this next one comes to us from military.air Africa, and it's all about. It's not all about new aircraft for the commercial kind of side. It's in the military side here. 55 new aircraft to beef up Nigeria's air power. So the Nigerian Air Force is set to receive 55 brand new aircraft of varying types from manufacturers across the world as parts of efforts towards strengthening Nigeria's security posture. Deliveries for these aircraft will begin in December 2022, that's this year, and continue on into next year, which represents one of Nigeria's largest acquisitions haul in over several decades. The new aircraft will add to those already delivered since 2015, and Nigeria is currently facing several security challenges, including an insurgency in the northeast, which has entered its 12th year, as well as bandits, separatists and kidnappings as well. Air Chief, blimey, did you hear that bang outside?
Yes, what was that? Was that
fireworks going on outside here? My word. It's all kicking off. Alfie's now going mad downstairs. Anyway, The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Isaka Amo, said on Thursday, disclosed that the Nigerian Air Force would take delivery of additional fighter helicopters in December this year, while other new acquisitions would be delivered in 2023. The aircraft comprise of 6 T-129 attack helicopters, 12 Bell aircraft, 4 Diamond DA-62, 2 Airbus C-295 medium tactical transport aircraft, and 2 Augusta Westland 109 Trekker helicopters, and also 2 Beechcraft King Air 360 ISR aircraft, as well as a replacement for 2 other King Air 350 that crashed back in 2020, and 3 more Wing Long 2 unmanned combat aerial vehicles. Ooh, can't go without your Wing Long 2s, eh, Nev?
No.
The combat aircraft are expected to replace aging Alpha jets of the Nigerian Air Force, and Leonardo will provide aircraft training to support munitions for Nigeria as part of a sole source. For combat support, the Air Force has selected Beechcraft King Air 360Is and DA-62s for its ISR requirements, and the value of the deal of the 2 Beechcraft aircraft is around $24 million US dollars. Oh, is that? No, that's billion. Is that 24 billion?
24 billion.
That's 24 billion. Sorry, my words.
That's quite a lot.
24 billion US dollars, which includes spares and ground support equipment. Its completion time frame was undisclosed, but nevertheless, the Beechcraft King Air 360, Diamond DA-62s and other ISR platforms will support national forces missions in the West African region. God, they've certainly got a few quid lying around, Nev.
Yes. And,
Nigeria?
As Richard Adams says in the chat room, that noise was very appropriate for the military section.
It was. It is all happening outside here. I'm more than worried about my little cat at the minute because she's outside, I expect, and I forgot to lock the cat flap. But anyway, moving on, Nev, you've got the next one all about a pilotless Black Hawk.
Well, this is on flightglobal.com, and it says that an experiment conducted by the Pentagon's Secretive Weapons Development Office, known as the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which is called DARPA, a modified Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk successfully flew 3 simulated missions without a pilot. DARPA and Sikorsky said on the 2nd of November that they completed 3 autonomous Black Hawk flights in October at Yuma proving grounds in Arizona. The goal of the effort, Young says, is to give commanders more flexibility in the face of constraints like mandatory crew rest, casualties, or battlefield hazards. We can go to one pilot where you may not have enough pilots for some missions, or we can go down to no pilot. DARPA says that October Alias test included 3 missions: a battlefield resupply of blood, a casualty evacuation, and a sling load with cargo suspended below the aircraft for transport. In a combat environment, the casualty evacuations and troop resupply missions are often some of the riskiest flight missions called for when friendly ground forces are under fire and may not have access to safe landing zones. Sikorsky, who builds the UH-60 Black Hawk used in the experiment, also developed the flight control software to enable pilotless operations, which the company calls Matrix. Matrix was first flown without pilots aboard in a February 2022 Alias test event. During 2 flights, a Matrix-powered UH-60 performed simple aerial maneuvers and navigated in a simulated New York skyline. Well, that seems to be a real benefit, isn't it? You know, if you're trying to do crew resupply, and troop resupply and this sort of stuff, not putting other people at risk by going into the zone by using autonomous stuff like this is clearly the way forward, isn't it?
Pilotless, I think, is probably is a good way forward, like you said, Nev. In that, obviously, pilotless, you're not going to have the issue of losing people, because we don't. Obviously, we hate to lose our service women and servicemen across the globe. It's good to have this kind of option available to prevent any loss of life. But pilotless aircraft still does, makes me wonder, Nev.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So next story comes to us from Armando. So over to you.
Now, guys, I'm always really excited to talk about vintage aviation, and this is a bit of a museum update for some of those warbirds that are around the world. So the first one is from warbirdnews.com. In August, we talked about this. The Vulcan to the Sky Trust announced that their lease at Doncaster Sheffield Airport would not be renewed, and that they would have to leave the site by the end of June 2023. Now, since early spring of this year, the Trust has been exploring options of moving the Vulcan XH558 from Doncaster. The Vulcan flew into the airport during March 2011 with VTST, or Vulcan to the Sky Trust, believing that the old RAF Finningley would become her permanent home, as defined in the plans for the Vulcan experience, as they were calling it. So sadly, the funding appeal failed. The organization then had to work hard to secure a new and permanent home for both XH558 and the English Electric Canberra Whiskey Kilo 163. Now, some of the sites that they looked at are some distance from Doncaster. This relocation effort will obviously bring some significant challenges, but there are outcomes in which VTST leadership believes that the organization can actually deliver. Now, they talked to the CAA about the possibility of a short ferry flight for XH558, but they now believe that is not possible. The advice was that legally the trust would need to appoint a design authority to assess, then oversee the restoration to flight work, and without a DA, no application could be considered. A VTST approached 3 companies to look at feasibility, timeline, costs, and to date, one has declined to support, and the 2 other organizations have not responded to the contract for this work. Informal research also indicated that the insurance for such a flight would be prohibitively expensive. So we'll keep an eye out to see what's going to happen with these 2 aircraft. Now, the next one is a little bit it's a Duxford update, After 5 years of painstaking work by the conservation team at the Imperial War Museum in Duxford, the Handley Page Victor XH648 is now complete and on permanent display within the museum's conservation hall. Now, last week, the Imperial War Museum invited a number of RAF Victor veterans to Duxford for the unveiling. The jet-powered strategic bomber, which was responsible for carrying an atomic bomb as part of Britain's nuclear deterrent during the Cold War of the 1960s and the 1970s, has undergone a meticulous full-scale restoration which began in late 2016. XH648 is the only remaining Handley Page Victor aircraft of its kind in the world, and after 5 years of restoration, it's now complete, one of the longest and largest conservation projects ever undertaken at IWM Duxford. Now, lastly, we also talked about a F-117 that was going to Palm Springs Air Museum. Now that museum is set to unveil their newly refurbished F-117A Nighthawk, serial number 85-0833, in a special ceremony which begins at 1 p.m. on Saturday, November 12th, 2022. This charismatic, as they're calling it, stealth fighter is on permanent loan from the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Major General Greg Beast Feast, retired, will attend the event as the special guest of honor. Beast was the first pilot to drop bombs from the F-117 in combat during both Operation Just Cause in Panama and Operation Desert Storm in Iraq in 1991. The museum's F-117A will bear his name and wear the colors of the U.S. Air Force's 415th Tactical Fighter Squadron when based at the highly secretive Tonopah Test Range deep in the Nevada desert. Now, the museum vice chairman, Fred Bell, will make a brief statement about the importance of the aircraft to education in the fields of science and technology. Now, this was one of only 59 aircraft produced. Now, this F-117, which typically appears in an all-black finish, arrived with an aluminum-colored exterior. This was due to its radar-absorbent material having been removed, as you can imagine, as part of the U.S. Air Force's demilitarization process. Now, this particular airframe, nicknamed the Black Devil, logged some 5,100 flight hours during its military career, and it took part in numerous combat operations.
Thank you, Armando. There's me pressing the wrong button there, Nev.
Do you notice the slight pause there?
Yeah, I noticed a slight pause. That was my fault. I was all fingers and thumbs there. Yeah. Matt does it so seamlessly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But me and Nev were just saying there, obviously XH558, I've heard that's not looking too sharp these days anyway. It's been let go a bit. And also, I'm glad to hear that obviously they've got that Handley Page Victor going to be I was obviously at Duxford ready to look at. So that's an excuse for me to take a trip over to Duxford ASAP. So keep your eyes on social media. I'll let you know when I'm going there. It'll probably be a Sunday, I expect. Trying to arrange a meet-up if anyone is close to Duxford. We'll go and have a little meet-up over at Duxford on a Sunday before Christmas, hopefully.
Oh, yes.
So, Nev, what is next up on the show?
Well, you remember we've been playing out a lot of interviews that we did at Jersey for the air display there, which was absolutely superb. Couldn't have gone better. One thing we haven't shown you, though, is any aircraft yet, apart from the OV-10 Bronco that Carlos went on over at the airport there. So why don't we run this bit of video, Carlos, and we'll talk you through it. When you're doing video at air shows, I find it quite difficult, to be honest with you. So this is a highly edited version of what actually happened, but there's some fascinating stuff here. And as you can see, the weather actually cleared beautifully for the display itself, considering that there was a lot of questions about whether whether it was actually going to go ahead at all at one point. But got some nice shots there of some of your favourite aircraft. And actually the aircraft that were displayed in the end, because a few had some technical problems, and you'll see some of these in the video, is the Pitch Special, the OV-10 Bronco, the S260, the Catalina, F4U Corsair, Flamand, the two of them, Team Raven, the Mustang, and the Rafat. So you'll be seeing some of these in this video. But Carlos, with his excellent stills camera, is going to put some of the shots that he took onto the Facebook website. So that will be worth having a look at, because the quality of photography that you've done is phenomenal, Carlos. It's really good, isn't it?
I got some good pictures this trip,
Yeah.
But it was a shame
that
the Reds didn't have a full display team this year, though, Nev.
No, indeed, yeah. But it's just quite difficult to follow these, I must say, because you
done well, Nev. You done well, considering.
These are the edited highlights, I have to say, because there was a few shots that were just unusable because I couldn't keep the camera still for long enough. But but it was, as you can see, the weather was just about right in the end, and thank goodness
it cleared up very nicely in the afternoon. And there's Micah's favourite on the screen now. Uncle Michael was he's not in the chat room, I don't think, but he will appreciate these pictures of the Catalina flying.
You see, I like stuff that flies slowly from a video point of view, because it's a lot easier to follow it. But the stuff that was whizzing through the air was quite tricky, I have to say.
Yeah, it's good to see the Catalina from Duxford.
Yes,
it's good to see them. Yeah.
Now next year we've already booked our hotel for next year. We
have, yes,
for Jersey, and we've booked some flights, and I haven't yet booked a hire car, but. Next year we're going to stay at the Radisson Blu Hotel, which is just to the sort of westerly part of where they display. So we'll be able to get a fantastic view from there as well, which would be nice. Looking forward to doing that again.
Yeah, so if any of our listeners are thinking about planning their air show visits for next year and wondering, what can I do next year? If you go online now, there are some cheap flights actually if you look online over to Jersey from the UK. It'll be great to see some of our US listeners over there. If you can make the massive trek across to Jersey, a few connecting flights will probably be needed to make that journey.
Well, from one Jersey to another.
From one Jersey to another, exactly. Yeah. Be good to see you over there. The dates are on the Jersey Airshow Facebook page. If you check them out on Facebook, Jersey Airshow, the dates are already on there for next year's show. Like I said, me and Nev are going to be there. It's all booked. We're ready to go for next year. It's going to be another good weekend, hopefully, of air show or weekday of air show fun. It'd be good to see you there. If you've got any ideas that you might want to come out to Jersey next year and see us, make sure you let us know. Send us an email so we can make sure that we obviously meet up with you for that obligatory evening meal, Nev.
Oh yes, very important. But just got to say once again to the folks at Jersey that made all this possible for us, they could not have been more hospitable. The organisers, the folks that we've made some really good friends out there. To be honest with you, when we got there, we weren't quite sure what we're going to be able to do, but I'm really delighted with the way we were received.
Yeah, that was very.
We've
very
actually
good.
got one more interview to play out. Actually,
oh, have we?
Perhaps we'll do next week. Yeah, one that I hadn't entirely forgotten about, but we've got a small interview to play out. Just a couple of minutes. Yeah.
There we
anyway,
go.
That was Jersey Airshow. Oh, sorry, Jersey International Air Display
2022, yes. And yes, Richard Adams, that was Miss Pickup, as in the Catalina PBY. It's called Miss Pickup anyway on the site.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. So it's time to wrap up soon, but we have got our first in a very long series of competitions to win a book. Now, we've got many books to give away, some very, very, very good books to give away, aviation related books, obviously. Now, Nev, what is this first book we're going to give away? Because obviously this is following on from our series that we've just finished last week, didn't we?
Yeah, so what we're going to do at the start of the month, we're going to be giving away a book, and there'll be a competition quiz question. This week, the book is 9 Lives by Chris Burwell. You will have seen the interviews that Nick very kindly did for us. We have a signed copy.
It's signed as well, guys. It's signed as well. And
I saw Chris do it himself, so I know that it's definitely him that signed it. And we have a question. And the question is, and you'll know this if you've listened to the podcast, but the question is, when Chris left the RAF in 1999 to join a company called Cobham, he spent 10 years there as a manager. Where in the UK was he based? So the question again, when Chris left the RAF in 1999 to join a company called Cobham, he spent 10 years there as a manager. Where in the UK was he based? And if you send your answers to podcast@planetalkinguk.com, don't put it in the chat room because we won't. We'll ignore it, basically. Send it to podcast@planetalkinguk.com.
Yes, send us your answers there. We want you to win this book. Answers in that answers on a postcard. You used to say answers on a postcard years ago, but that's a bit different now, isn't it, Nev? Answers on an email.
Well, yes, we've moved on, haven't we?
We've moved on. So your chance then to win that book, then signed book from Chris Burwell, and let's hopefully we'll get some correct answers in, Nev. And the answer is honestly, it's in the interview series. If you've watched the interview series that we've been playing out here on the show, it will be on there. Don't worry. Yeah. So, Nev, it's time to wrap up the show. So, social media links?
Yes, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search for Plane Talking UK. That's where we are. WhatsApp number +44 757 224 9166. You can also use that number if you want to enter the competition by sending us a text to that as well. That's +44 757 224 9166. Email the show, podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and the website is all the W's, planetalkinguk.com, and you'll see us on YouTube, of course, as well. Just search youtube.com and search for Plane Talking UK. On the website, there's an Amazon link, so if you do your shopping through Amazon, you can use a link via our website. We get paid a small referral fee for that. You can become a patron as well. Details of how to do that are on the website also.
Yes. That is how you do it. Easy as that. So hopefully I've managed to get everything working properly on here tonight. Nev, we had a slight tech hiccup at the beginning of the show because we didn't have our VT clock. But
it's not the end of the world, is it? Let's be honest.
No, it's not the end of the world at all. So that's all we've got time for, guys and girls. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in to the show this evening. Thanks as well to all our audio downloaders of the show who listen to us each week via all the usual download realms. If you've got 2 or 3 minutes spare in your time and you've not already done it, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher where you leave the review things, that would be really good to have that. And also, we'd love to have some feedback from you. So if you've not already got in touch with us at the show, to send us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. All those details are on the website. If you go on there, allthews.planetalkinguk.com, go on there and find the details of how to send us an email. So that's about it, Nev. I'm going to leave you to close the show whilst I, do the bit that Matt normally does.
Work out how to do it, yes. Well, I shan't be here next week. I'm doing a lot of travelling around the UK. I think my car will think I've shoved a drill up the speedo cable by the end of the week. We're doing a lot of travelling next week for work, so I shan't be on the show, unfortunately. But thank you very much to everyone for joining us, as always. And have a great time. Bye for now.
No, keep going, Nev. I've still got to try and find...
Oh, you haven't... seriously? Oh, dear. We'll have to edit this bit out, clearly. But no, really appreciate your time and visiting our show, as always. And thanks to everybody in the chat room. It's been a great show again.
Keep going, Nev.
hope you have a great weekend.
Keep going, Nev.
And we'll see you next week, but I shan't be here, as I say. But Matt will be back next week with Carlos.
Can't find the closer.
Oh dear.
What has Matt done? No, what has Matt done with it? I can't
Perhaps
find
he's
it.
put it in a special place that you can't find it.
I've got everything on this list here of stuff to click on, but none of them is the PTK closing credits.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't go then, can we?
We can't shut the show
We'll
down.
have to go on for another 2 hours.
We're going to have to do a, yeah. No, that's the opener. No,
Well, I'm sure you'll find
the
a...
final one's not in here. I kid you not.
I'm sure it's there somewhere.
I've got openers, but I can't find the closing credits thing. A little bit of editing here to do.
I think there is. Well, at least it's only at the end.
Well, that is true, yeah, I suppose. No, definitely can't. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if I can't... let's see if I can find it here.
Oh, dear. It's going to be a long night, isn't it?
Keep everyone entertained, please, Nev.
Well, I'm trying to. What else have I done this week? Oh, yes. New carpet in part of the house. That's quite a challenge. Moving furniture around, especially when the furniture was built in the room, and so you can't actually move it out of the room. So we had 2 sofas that we literally had to take out through the French windows and put them in the garden so the guys could do the carpet today. That was hard work, definitely. And what else? Oh, yes. Stockholm in the autumn. Very nice autumn, winter as we are now. That was a beautiful experience. It's one of my favourite cities. And honestly, the air quality there is absolutely fantastic. You definitely notice it if you've come from somewhere that's not Scandinavia. It's really, really nice and pleasant. Plenty of sunshine. And great flying, great food. Food's always good in Sweden. Not the cheapest place in the world, but it's nice, which is the main thing. Have you found the closing credits yet, Carlos?
I'm getting there, Nev.
Or have you just gone home?
I found it, Nev. I found
goodness.
it. Right now, if you can do the lead out again.
And I gave APG so much stick last week when we talked about overruns, and we've been doing 3.5 minutes over the odds. But anyway, thanks to everybody for joining this week. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.